Hey, it's Barça here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about Barcelona's 4 captains. I think that today everyone agrees that they shouldn't be starting 11 players anymore, and after this season they might well all 4 leave the club. But if we're being honest, that should have already happened some years ago, and in this video we'll look at when it should have exactly happened, and from where on the board made a mistake by letting them continue at the club. Make sure to stay tuned, as this is definitely going to be interesting. Let's look at Sergio Busquets first. He's 34 years old right now, and in the big games thus far this season he was one of the big problems. At the moment I think nobody really backs him anymore. The problem he has is that he's too slower than he already was, he's less sharp than he used to be some years ago, by which I mean he just loses the ball more easily due to lack of concentration, makes poor passes or assesses situations wrongly. And he just lacks general energy and drive. Look at Gavi or Ter Stegen. They are gutted after losses like the Clasico or the recent game against Bayern Munich. They want to really give their all for this team and get Barcelona back where they belong. Busquets undoubtedly loves this club, but he just hasn't got the spirit anymore to really show that on the fields. So that's why he's just not really Barca material anymore. Sure, he might have a brilliant game every once in a while, but generally he's not good enough at this point. So when should he have left then? Well, I think in 2018 or 2019 he was definitely still world class, and Barca made no mistake in keeping him back then. He might have had a bad game sometimes, but generally he was basically the best defensive midfielder in the world. What Barca should have done from 2019 or 2020 onwards though is slowly replace him. And honestly, Frenkie de Jong might have been signed for that purpose. No manager just ever really gave him a proper opportunity in that defensive midfield role, which was definitely a mistake. And if you really want to put Frenkie de Jong somewhere else, you should have signed another player to replace Busquets. The last couple of years Frenkie de Jong never really played there and no defensive midfielder was signed, so Busquets just kept on playing in that role. I think that in the following years he should have been gradually replaced. He started to become older at this point, so he shouldn't have played all games anymore. And he was declining too. In more and more games he made mistakes that you didn't expect him to make. Overall though, he was still good. Remember the Euros in 2021? He was easily one of Spain's best players there, so he still had it in him, there's no doubt about that. But after 2 seasons of slowly replacing him, next season he would have become the option that was more on the bench than the starting lineup. And the other defensive midfielder would have slowly started to become the real starting 11 player. And in the summer of 2022 I think the club should have then sold him, which wouldn't be too much of a big deal given the fact that another player was already the main defensive midfielder. It's a little bit the same as with Rakitic, who slowly took over Xavi's position back in the day, and Xavi then left after 1 year too. Now, in reality, Busquets is still at the club and we haven't really got a replacement for him, while he's not on his old level anymore and he will only decline from here on. So, slowly replacing him from 2020 onwards and selling him this summer would have been the right way to manage the defensive midfield role if you ask me. Then it's time for Gerard Pique. He's 35 years old and honestly I don't know how he's even still at the club right now. When he's been put on a bench this season, which has only happened because better defenders were injured, it's become clear that he's not on his old level anymore. His pace is horrifying and just like with Busquets really, his overall sharpness isn't on point anymore. He's more likely to misjudge the situation right now than some years ago and he just makes more mistakes than he used to. And also, just like with Busquets again, he hasn't got the energy anymore. The drive that you need to play for this club and to compete against the big teams. So again, when should he have actually left? Well, in 2018 and 2019 he was still world class. This might seem weird to think about, but not that long ago he really was still world class if you ask me. And just like with Busquets, I think we should have looked for a definite replacement for him from 2019 or 2020 onwards. I think the 2018-2019 season was his last great season. From there on he's only declined up till now. So instead of just letting him play in that role until you see the consequences, Barca should have signed a replacement in the summer of 2019. A real world-class defender to compete with Pique. And slowly but surely he would have claimed that starting spot and Pique would have ended up on the bench. In that case, I think that around the summer of 2021 Barca would have been able to sell him. Just think about that. We could have easily gotten rid of Pique in 2021 already if we had just managed the situation in a better way. Now I think he doesn't really bother the club that much. I mean, without the injury crisis he would have barely had any playing time and our defense shouldn't be that much of a problem. So today this problem has been solved, though it should have happened 1 or 2 years earlier. Next we've got Sergi Roberto, and I feel like with him we used to have a player that was nice to be able to count on if we needed it, but after a while he became a real starter. And sure, he's not bad, but for Barcelona starting 11 he's not really the player that you want. And he's been part of the starting 11 for years now. If you're looking at him as a rotational player, which he should have always been, then it's actually okay that he's still at the club right now. He's only 30 years of age, so as a rotational player I think he's still quite good to have at the club, providing his salary isn't too high of course. though I think the club should sell him before 2024 to still get some profit from him. If you really think about him as a starter, I'd probably say that we should have sold him in 2018 or 2019. Some years ago, he still had quite a lot of attacking threat and good chemistry with a lot of players. But from 2019 onwards, he was really just nothing more than a burden as a starting 11 player. So from that point of view, he shouldn't have stayed at the club beyond 2019 or so. Finally, we've got Jordi Alba, maybe the only one who's still really usable for Xavi. In an ideal world though, he shouldn't be at the club anymore today, or as a starter anyway. Up till last season, he was the only real trusted option as a left back. And this might be an unpopular opinion, but he was actually good enough to be a starting 11 player at Barca if you ask me. There's just always been one big problem with him: he had no competition. That's why often he didn't have to be at his very best to stay in the lineup. He also got tired during every season towards the end, which led to bad performances when Barca needed him most, like at Anfield in 2019. So I don't think we should have ever sold Jordi Alba, since he's always more or less been one of the 5 best left backs in the world. And on his day, the best probably. Barca should have just signed another real good left back in 2018 somewhere to compete with him, so that he was always on his best. And eventually this left back would have slowly replaced him, and today he would be the main left back, while Jordi Alba would be a rotational player or would have left the club last summer. Today he's slowly getting replaced by a very young Alejandro Balde who still needs some time to fulfill his true potential, though he's definitely a good player today too. So a left back will need to go through some rebuild years, you could say, and then the position will be fixed. It could have been one of our stronghold positions though if the board had managed the position in a better way. So it's fair to say that our situation today could have looked quite different if we had sold our 4 captains a little earlier, or at least not relied on them up till now. Today I think Pique is not too much of a problem anymore, and our centre back positions are well occupied for the future, but injuries just got in the way there for the past month. Jordi Alba's problem is slowly getting solved too now, though it's gonna take a while to really have a world class left back again. Sergio Roberto isn't too much of a burden anymore, and Busquets, well, he'll probably lose his place slowly from now on, and by 2024 we should definitely have a replacement for him. So today they're definitely getting replaced, but if this had happened in 2020 for example, a lot of Barca's darkest memories might have never been there, and we would have probably been in a better place right now. That was it for today's video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and feel free to share your own opinion in the comments down below. Força Barça and have a good day.